further ado, and so we can get started, I'll go ahead and let Joshua Silva and Alberto Ricordi introduce themselves if they would like to introduce more information and start to introduce the CRB information. Thank you.
Yeah, right on. Thanks, Russell, and thanks everyone for attending. My name is Josh Silva. I'm a edible crop extension agent on the island of Oahu, but have been dealing with CRB issues here and there for like the past couple of years. And I'll be co-presenting with Alberto. You can introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Alberto Ricordi. I'm also extension agent here in Oahu. I did with CRB mostly like heard about it before I became an extension agent last year. And then when I was start to work as an extension agent, I was more involved in the outreach and talks like these that I learned more about it. So I'm glad to see people interested in learn more now before it becomes a big problem on the Big Island. So let's share the screen. Can you see the presentation?
Yep, we can see it. Thanks.
Okay. And I'll give the remote control to Josh. Okay, should be done.
Yep. Okay, right on. Thank you. And I just got my picture off for bandwidth's sake. But yeah, hello everyone again. So we'll be presenting primarily some background on the life cycle of CRB, the coconut rhinoceros beetle, and in different integrated pest management or IPM practices you can do for it or that we've recommended and or tested. Let's see. Okay, so this is us. Alberto and Joshua. So we're based on Oahu at the Pro City Urban Garden Center. So if you would like to contact us for further information, feel free to, we have it on the last slide too, but here's our email addresses. As I mentioned before, we'll give a brief introduction to CRB, its origins, life cycles, the kind of damages you should be look out for on specific hosts, and then how it spreads, and then the different strategies to manage it. So here's a map, a pretty interesting map of the distribution of coconut rhinoceros beetle throughout the world as it is right now. So its native origin and place, yeah, native place of origin is typically Southeast Asia. So anywhere you see the green symbols, that's where it's normally or natively found. But then at different points in the 20th and 21st centuries, it's spread throughout different parts of the Pacific and as well as the Indian Ocean. As I'll mention on the next slide, there's some success stories that happened in like the 1900s that was able to maybe stop the spread and make it more manageable. But then just in the 2000s is when it started spreading to other parts, like Papua New Guinea, but more closely related to here in Hawaii is Guam. And there is a specific bow type of CRB. There's about I think like at least 2 or 3 that it's kind of like a subspecies, and we have the one that Guam has. So when you see CRBG, that means the CRB Guam bow type, and that's the one that we have here because it matters when it comes in terms of different biological controls. Okay. So this is just an example of how it spread in the early 1900s. So you can see from Indonesia and the Philippines, it was able to spread into other parts of the South Pacific. And then it eventually made its way kind of to the areas near Samoa and Tonga Tapu, as you see in the picture and the dates. But then at the time, there's a virus that was introduced that was able to mitigate its spread and manage the populations. But that was a different biotype. So that virus, when they introduced it into the Guam biotypes of CRB, it was not effective. So that's why at least this specific virus that was used in that early dispersal in the 1900s doesn't work for the Guam biotype here that we have in Hawaii. And we'll touch back on that virus one in a few slides. But coconut rhinoceros beetle, easy way to identify them is the adult. It's like it's the largest beetle that we have here in Hawaii now. So it's about 2 to 2.5 inches long. Identified by this nice long horn, especially if it's a male. If it's a female, it's a kind of a shorter horn that you see on top of there, and then other kind of more hairier features. The grub is especially huge. But sometimes if you're working in different kind of mulch or compost piles, it's hard to distinguish the coconut rhinoceros beetle from oriental flower beetle larvae. But here are a couple of cues that you can look for that is also found on the CRB response team's webpage, but such as like it curls into a perfect C shape rather than like the oriental flower beetle where the head curls a little bit more inward past like the butt region. And it crawls on its side. And also the oriental flower beetle, it has like this little raster line on the rear end. So if you can look for these things as well as the size, eventually the CRB adult and larva will be much bigger than the oriental flower beetle, but you can use these clues to distinguish which one you have. And it's very important for surveying work, especially in this early stages of detection. The CRB life cycle, it's somewhat lengthy, but still can be kind of fast. So the adult, as we mentioned, here's a picture of a female and a male adult. And when it's laid eggs and the eggs hatch, they go into 3 different instar stages. So the instars are just the different larval or worm stages of different sizes. And the times that they are in those stages uh, can vary, but they're pretty long. So, when the eggs are laid, it takes about a couple of weeks for it to hatch. And then it spends another couple of weeks in that first small instar stage. Then it grows into the second instar stage, which is another couple of weeks. And then it spends the majority of its life as a third instar. All this time eating upon different kind of organic debris, mulch and compost type of materials. And it'll stay in this for about the 5 to 6 month period, depending on the temperature and the conditions. And once that's done, it enters this pupa stage, which is, you'll be surprised if you ever, hopefully you don't, but if you ever do see it or you look at pictures online, it's like this little orange rubbery thing that looks like a beetle. So this is when it's hardening off to form into an adult. And then once it emerges from that pupa and it's an adult, it can be in that stage for about 3 to 5 months and laying over about 90 eggs for females during that lifetime as an adult. So you're looking at about anywhere from 8 to 11 months from egg all the way to adult to that time. And the life cycle and the behavior, it's important because that kind of can tell you where you will find them and as well as where you might be focusing management. So the CRB adults, they like to feed primarily on the coconuts or palms and other plants primarily. So this is where they get their nutrition from. And you'll be seeing signs of adults in your areas if you do see signs on these plant types. While the larva, they spend their lifetime inside of different kind of mulch, organic debris, organic rich systems. So you'll be managing for the larva more in these types of systems. So as we mentioned, and probably you've heard over and over, but the main vector or main way that CRB is spread through different areas is going to be the mulch and organic plant matter. So if there are, for example, trees that are infested with coconut rhinoceros beetle, and then those are cut down, ground up into chips, and then that's then spread to other parts of the island. That's one major way that it was likely spread across the island of Oahu. So and there's other kind of other mulch types. So we have another article or picture on here. That's an article in the news of from just yesterday, I believe, where they found it in garden soil. So that's another place to check. Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, we'll get to there. Oh my goodness, what's happening? Yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah, so that's the picture we'll get to. Okay, so that's another way of spread, and it's important to be able to look for that and inspect it. So inspection is a big part of making sure that it doesn't come, and if you do see it, then you report it immediately. But mulch and organic material are going to be the main things to look for. So as you probably heard, it's widespread on Oahu, but it would happen very quickly. So for the first few years that CRB was on Oahu, it was primarily isolated to this Pearl Harbor region, and it managed to stay there for a long, long time. But there was some incident that happened that vectored CRB to one hot spot here in like Waianae and some other spots in Central Oahu, and then from there it just spread like wildfire. And now it's all over the islands, all coasts, um, spread by those mulch or other kind of plant materials that were infested with either the eggs or the larvae. Because the adults, they don't fly too far. They fly to from their hiding spot to the trees, but then they can't fly miles and miles like how birds can, for example. So this is the current distribution uh on the different islands. So as you can see on Oahu, it's pretty widespread, but luckily Maui and Big Island, so you'll get more updates in the next presenters. But so far they've kind of just been isolated to these smaller areas. So hopefully it can be eradicated and managed very appropriately. Kauai, it's a little bit more difficult. It's in a lot of different areas of the island now, so hopefully it doesn't spread or establish as much. But yeah, well, time will tell. So what to look for on top of coconuts and palms? First thing is, look for these signs of feeding damage. So you might see one of a couple of things. One, you might see the actual borehole, and we're just happening to be at the right spot where we found an actual beetle in that borehole. You can tell it's a borehole just because of all the different shavings and chippings that the CRB grinds through to get to that heart of palm, which is a part they're trying to eat. So if you look at the plant, they're not going to see actual feeding down, or you won't actually see like beetles feeding on the leaves because that's a little bit too old. They're going to want to feed right in this center area where the heart of palm is located. And we have another picture on another slide, but that's where you'll be monitoring for, as well as you'll be kind of focusing your protection if you're protecting actual palms and coconut trees. Because once they go through that hole and they eat that heart of palm, that leaf will continue to grow, and once it emerges, that's when you'll see that V kind of damage, which is an angular cut. Or if the CRB gets it just right, it can eat right through that growing point of the leaf that's emerging, and eventually it just rots, and you can pull that center growth out. So either you'll see a leaf damage, or you can just see the whole leaf come out of that center stem. So this is a picture Alberto took from one of our project sites where you can see the CRB actually was inside of that burrow hole, but it was eating right in that soft white heart of palm meat. And that's what they're trying to get to for their nutrition. So yeah, that's why that area we'll be focusing in on is right in that heart of palm center area. So CRB, majority of the time, I've never heard of it wiping out a tree with one bite. So it takes multiple feeding cycles to damage, and eventually kill off a tree. If you see a tree that has any kind of damage on the leaves, you can imagine that it took about a month for that to happen from when it emerges, because it takes about a coconut, at least a coconut tree, takes about a month for one leaf to fully expand into a mature leaf. So if you see a leaf that, just emerged and is damaged, that feeding damage likely occurred about a month ago. So you can kind of see the cycle of it as it moves, and or know that if a lot of the old leaves are healthy and you see a new leaf that's damaged, and CRB may have appeared recently in your area. So please, yeah, keep a lookout for damage, especially on the newer leaves. And then just terms and terminology is like infested versus infected. So infected is typically used for describing things like diseases like bacteria and fungal diseases, while infestation deals with insect pests. So because insects, they don't always live on the tree, they kind of go back to another hiding spot or roosting host and then come back. They just infest plants. But we have heard incidents of where there's enough organic debris in a tree, as they're eating it and damaging it, that the CRB can lay eggs on the tops of tree crowns, of coconut tree crowns, and some people, they found larvae all the way at the top of the tree. So um, pest pressures have to be very, very heavy in order for that to happen. Was there something you wanted to point out, Alberto?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, thanks. All right. Yeah. So although coconut rhinoceros beetle is, highlights coconut as being a major host, there are other plant types that it goes after. So let's see if we can go back one. Okay, well, let's see if we can go back. Okay, right there. Okay, so fan palms. So things like lolu, these are also a very good host for CRB. They love to eat it. Um, I want to say that because we've had fan palms and lolu at some of our stations, as well as coconut, and they primarily went for the lolu first and then the coconut. So I kind of want to say they might even have a preference towards fan palms more than coconuts, but that's just a anecdote observation. But just know that they are very attracted to fan palms and lolu.
Josh, I would
Yes.
add to that what I've seen is that the Lulu palms, they're way more susceptible in the way that they're more like sensitive to the damage. I think because of the anatomy of the palm, the
Mm,
coconut can handle the feeding better because the new growth is more protected by the crown, by the way the leaves are like bundled together. The Lulu palm, their growing tip is more exposed, like the way you can see like the fronds more open. So if the beetle is feeding from the meristem, like the growing tip of the palm, that's where they usually will go in the lulu palm. When you see lulu palms here being damaged, it's pretty much like too late. They usually do not recover from the damage.
yeah, thanks for sharing, Alberto. So even more sense to, yeah, see if you can monitor and protect them if you can. But yeah, thanks. Yeah, I didn't know that. So thanks, Alberto. Um, yeah, so other palm type hosts include a royal palm. So you've heard this in the news that a lot of royal palms here on Oahu are damaged, especially old heritage types, but also date palms have been observed to be hosts too. And then we're also seeing damage on other non-palm types. So when uh, CRB is eaten a good number of whatever palm hosts are in the area, they might spread out to other plants, kind of expecting it because it's the sap that has nutrition inside of it. So they go after things like bananas. You see a damage hole over here. So you've seen like a few of those. Other growers have found damage in things like challah and kalo. And then even one of my growers just was growing zucchini and found actual CRB adult feeding into the zucchini fruit itself. So We've also heard from other things like I think papaya. So they are expanding, not saying that it's, they're gonna eat everything, but when their main food source is running low and or like damaged, they might feed on other things in the meantime. So that's its major damage types and signs you'll look for, as well as the host. So some of the things to manage it, we try to do an integrated pest management approach. So rather than just spraying everything, try these other steps first. And the first one is going to be prevention. Just try to avoid bringing them to your island or to your area, which, like we said before, the main vector is going to be mulch and or organic debris plant materials. So if you can thoroughly inspect and survey any kind of material you're planning to transport, um, inspect it very thoroughly for any signs of adults or larva itself. And if it is, just contact the appropriate on-island group to deal with it. Just don't transport it, because once it does get transported and it kind of gets lost, the tracking system gets lost for it. Like that's how it spread all over Oahu. So try not to, bring that or share that. As well as I mentioned that news story, even not only just tree trimmings and that kind of wood mulch, but even things that are shipped from other areas, other islands. Um, Always be aware and look into that stuff too. And if you ever have questions, it might be worth establish some kind of protocol for some phytosanitation. So letting it sit in there to develop and then come back to survey it later on to see if anything did form, and or prevent it from spreading in case something does hatch out, because these larvae, as well as the adults, it can easily chew through plastic bags and plastic materials. We've done trials that we'll show later on where we have them in plastic containers, and rather nibbling through some of those solid plastic containers was very surprising. So that's the main one, is prevention. If you can prevent it, that's the best. So being able to work with different groups on island. So I think the other speakers might touch on that. That'll greatly help reduce it. If you do have any kind of plant materials, don't stockpile them. If you can utilize them and or use a heat treatment, that can help kill off a lot of the larvae and the eggs. So being able to have proper composting is one example. Other guys are looking into things like biochar making to reduce it. That can also kill seeds. That might be another option. But if it is stays inside of that compost category, just be careful that if it cools, it can get reinfested. Another thing too is if you do decide to use mulch, try to utilize it and spread it very thinly, less than 2 inches, because that stops moisture from being able to collect. And if it's a dry material, the CRB don't prefer it. They prefer nice moist wood material. For physical mechanical management, um, there's a couple of things you can do. So one is netting trees and or netting mulch piles that I'll show. The best thing is going to be using 1/2 inch eye. So there are some other nets out there like bird netting, but it's a 3/4 inch eye and it's slightly too big to catch them constantly. So this is a 1/2 inch monofilament netting. Um, you know, I have this netting of a tree, but it is very labor intensive because as a tree grows and expands, you got to rewrap it. So that's why we don't recommend, if you do use a wrapping technique, don't use zip ties, those kind of things. Um, as well as it's not a very easy method to do for very tall trees. So this is just for those low bearing dwarf coconut trees that it works the best for. And then also just a caveat, the monofilament netting, because of it's not UV rated, it does degrade after like 6 to 8 months. It starts to get very brittle and it could get snagged and get broken very easily, as well as the beetle can. So it's not a perfect solution. And if you do wrap trees, like I said, don't use um, zip ties because it does get stuck to the tree and it's hard to rewrap later on. and then just have good technique where you don't have gaps around that heart of palm zone. So if you need want to look at different nets and netting strategies, have a YouTube video as well as an article that we wrote, so you can check those out on YouTube or our CTAR websites. Oh, oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, so that one you can watch at your own time. Other netting types that have been used throughout the Pacific, primarily from Guam, there's like a bow tie method where they would wrap netting or with a rock and then tie it up so it looks like a bow tie, and they would put that rock right into that feeding zone where the branch attaches to the main trunk, and make it very fluffy. So whenever you use net, you want to make sure it's fluffy so that the CRB can't get a footing on it and can't make their way through it. So if you make it fluffy, you actually will catch them better. Okay, so that's how you can use a bow tie method. And there's another video how to utilize that. And with this one, it would require less wrapping, re-netting, because it kind of just sits in that part of the trunk. But it's still, as it gets older, you might need to refluff it. And there's other kind of traps that you can use with netting and lures. So this is another one they had with UV light method. So Alberto will mention more on some of his testings with traps like this. If you do decide, if there are people that do decide to use mulch for their planting areas or compost, one thing you can do is just net that whole area. Doesn't have to be a big piece of net, but that will prevent them from getting in. So these are all like females trying to get in to lay their eggs, as well as it does catch them when they try to emerge out of a mulch pile. Just be on the lookout even for potted plants. So these are some home growers that noticed these small little holes inside of a potted plant, and they can't figure out what it was. So we decided to put some netting on top and see what would happen. And yeah, you catch adults trying to get in and get out. So even in potted plants, because it's organic material, it's irrigated, it's moist, they want to lay their eggs inside of them too. So if it does population do get high, just know that you may need to manage for your potted plants also. So just showing some on-farm trials of when we did net and how much we did catch. So it does take a while for from when a newly established mulch pile gets there, like we said, to the eggs hatch and they develop into larvae and adults. But we're catching a lot of CRB trying to enter into the net, signified by the blue one, and then also exiting from the net, which is by the orange one. So, we're catching, what is this, like a couple hundred over the course of just these 2 months. But the owner, he had to move his pile, so we weren't able to keep going for the theoretical 6 months of when the larva takes a go out into an adult. But that's the theory, is if you can net a pile, keep it on there for at least like 6 months, you should be able to reduce the population as much as can, as long as the net is doesn't have any holes, doesn't get brittle, doesn't have any snags. And you can always double layer that net to increase your chances. Yeah, and that was just showing the potential numbers inside of a certain mulch pile. So we're doing samples of 3 by 3 feet and digging down, and when we dug down, we're finding them like about 1.5 feet deep, right inside of thick clay soil. So not only just in the wood mulch material, but even inside of the dirt. So they can burrow very deep down where it's very nice and moist, and especially if it's organic rich. But just saying that in that kind of mulch area and soil, in like a 20 by 6 foot pile of mulch, you can expect to find a few hundred larvae and adults mixed in there. So these are just some places that are commonly where you can commonly and easily find monofilament netting of that 1/2 inch eye size. And by 1/2 inch, again, it's that square measurement, so just the edges and the borders of the net. So this is Lee Fisher and this is Memphis Net and Twine. But since CRB has been a big issue, a lot of this netting has been bought in bulk by a lot of different people. So I think Memphis Net and Twine currently has things in stock, but then the Lee Fisher, that one, last I checked last week, it was out of stock still. But yeah, just letting you know those are like the two main sites. If you find another, that'd be great. Yeah, please share it with your community. Biological, there's not too many biological things as of right now. Some people were looking into using pigs as a means, but then, as they can dig through material, but they got to be controlled and contained, and it has to have a certain management practice to that. And even chickens are known to eat on them, but then you have to like actually throw it at them. They won't go searching as much for the grubs as it would other bugs. But know that they do eat them. I've seen chickens where they whack them and they make it flat and then they just gulp it all in one bite. There is research looking at different fungal what do you call it, predators for the larva. So the main genus of that fungal group is Metarhizium, but there's a lot of different species out there. So I've tried some uh, internet bought species of Metarhizium anisopliae, and I didn't have any mortality when I tried it as a drench on top of a mulch pile. But then there is another professor at University of Hawaii and their grad students that they found a couple of different other species that were isolated here in Hawaii, especially Oahu, that had like 60, 70, even up to 80% mortality on larvae. So it infests them and kills them off and they turn kind of green like this. So currently nothing is available for the public, but then they are in the process of mass producing it. So hopefully very soon that will be another management strategy we can use. And as I mentioned before, that virus long time ago in the 1900s, it's not effective against the Guam type of CRB. But then there was a article that came out last year that there's some rhino beetle viruses from Palau that are being tested at the University of Guam along with Tokyo University and seeing if that Palau virus does work on the Guam type. So we'll see if it what that success rate is. And then, eventually after approvals and studies are done to make sure that it's a good bowel control for Hawaii, just saying that that could be a possible ray of hope for us because guys in Palau said that has helped keep their populations to a moderate level where it's not as bad as like it was in Guam. And then lastly, chemicals. So we've done a couple of synthetic pesticide trials. Use imidacloprid, which is a systemic, can be used as a chunk injection or sometimes as a drench, which takes a little bit longer and provides about like 4 to 6 months of protection. And then other two contact pesticides are cypermethrin, as well as carbaryl. So not sure if you know him, but Jensen Ueda helped to spray these trials at a coconut collection we have at the Urban Garden Center. So we did um, one application of Admire Pro as a solo drench, but then we did monthly applications of Mustang Max, that cypermethrin, and carbaryl, and just showing you that Mustang Max is RUP and carbaryl is not, but then and what the max applications per year was. So hopefully the rotation could be apply this Admire Pro as a systemic for that first 6 month protection, and then the other two products you can rotate to fill out the rest of the year. Yeah. So what our trial showed was pretty promising results. So we sprayed it in March and then checked it every 2 months after that. You can see that Admire Pro, the first 2 months, there wasn't good protection because it does take time for it to get assimilated into the tissue as a solo drench. But then after that, it was offering good protection where we weren't seeing any damage on that inner new young growth. And the carbaryl provided pretty good protection too. And then the Mustang was by far the best. Like none of the trees that, or all of the trees that were sprayed with Mustang had no damage on them. Okay, so I think these products are very promising in terms of a rotation program. Okay. And next, Alberto will be continuing.
All right. So yeah, you guys might have seen on the news drone applications for application of contact insecticides, especially when CRB was detected on Kauai. Drones were like deployed and used for like as a fast action contact insecticide. However, drones, drone applications, they do require a UAS, like unmanned aircraft system, Part 107 pilot license. And if you want to learn what is required and how to train to obtain this license, you can check this resource from Dr. DeFrank and Dr. Daniel Jenkins. So they gave a workshop here at UGC, and his presentation is available in this link. So when Russell shared these slides with you, you guys can check that out. It has like a step-by-step on how to obtain a drone license, and that's becoming a very a big opportunity, I think, for arborists and landscapers to offer that as a service, not just for CRB, for other pest control in general, even for use a growth regulator, for example, to drop coconut fruits from trees before they become big. So Josh mentioned already that imidacloprid can be applied as tree injection. That's the preferred way of treating coconut palms with imidacloprid, because when you do tree injection, each tree is treated as an individual area. Because if you look at the label of the pesticides, there is a limit on how many grams you can apply of active ingredient per acre. And there you limit your application to maybe 5 or 8 palms per acre. There are cases where there's like a clump of like 15 palms in a single planter, so that's not practical anymore. So with tree injections, each palm or each tree is considered like a single acre, a single area, unit area. Because once you do the tree injection, the insecticide moves upward via the xylem, right, of the tree. So it's not going down toward causing potential groundwater contamination. So that's the rationale behind why you can, like each tree is considered one single plant. So tree injection is the preferred way, is also more efficient because everything that you inject, if it's done in the right way, like if you have to wait for a period of ideally a drought stress, or at least cut irrigation a couple weeks before you do application to make sure that the tree is not saturated with water and will absorb all that liquid that you are injecting in the tree. So there are proper way you need to get trained to do that. ArborJet is one of the main like equipment suppliers for that with the ImaJet. And this is a graph that shows how injections affected the population of CRB in like studies here in Oahu. So Iroquois Point had a big infestation. In this red bar, there were injections done there, and then you can see the population of CRB declining, and then it bounces back up again. Same thing for Pearl City. Population of CRB was going up. There was this period of tree injection, and I'm talking like about like a regional scale, like about 100 pounds being injected in an area. And then the population of CRB started to drop. The population, I mean, is like catching in those black boxes that hang on the trees. So this was a study to like confirm if the regional scale treatment of imidacloprid was effective. There are some downsides of doing the imidacloprid injection or other insecticides, like systemic injections. They if you look into the label, you are required by remove inflorescences because the insecticide can be toxic to bees and other wildlife. So you have to remove all the coconuts, all the inflorescences before you do the injection. So read your label, become familiar with the product, and follow the regulations. And those are one of the limitations of using these products, right? In terms of being practical, because you have to keep going up and removing the flowers. So that led to the demand of alternative controls, such as organic insecticides that could be used in coconuts and still allow harvesting of the fruit, especially for human consumption. And for example, at a residential scale, people that have coconuts in their yard don't want to inject or cannot inject imidacloprid or insecticides, or use a contact insecticide in the canopy as a spray. So we looked into what is done in India, since CRB is native from India, and there are a lot of studies on using essential oils to manage CRB. It's not necessarily just as killing the CRB, but also as a repellent. So we found these studies that eucalyptus, basil, thyme worked, and had a tree trimmer spray a solution of 6% eucalyptus oil in a palm that we kind of knew that had CRB in it, and saw CRB like jumping out of the canopy. Really, like 2 CRBs like jumped down. They didn't like it. So Josh and I, we went to the same mulch pile in the same place where he had the netting trial, and harvested beetles and larvae and sprayed them with 6% solution of basil, 6% solution of eucalyptus, or 6% solution of eucalyptus at the different stages of development. So first or second instar, third instar, and adults. And you can see the basil in the middle, they really didn't like, sorry, the beetles, they didn't like the basil spray. And after 4 days, about 2/3 of them died that were applied with basil, but none of them died that were in the control. So that was like a good indication for us that we could potentially use essential oils to help manage CRB. And again, I will repeat, like, it's not like that we're gonna kill and eradicate CRB using basil oil, but for people that has palms that can be sprayed with a solution of essential oil, it could be used as a repellent potentially. And try different methods. So the most like field application and large scale trial who have done so far was in Waimanalo. So I got this property in Waimanalo that had over 90 coconut palms planted in a row, all uniform, planted at the same time. They have a neighbor that has a lot of mulch piles unattended. Of course, they're not friends. And there are a lot of landscape nurseries around, so a lot of material moving around. So it was like an ideal setting for CRB study. And he graciously allowed me to treat his palms for free since November of last year to try to find a solution. So I've been spraying the palms on an average monthly basis. Ideally, I want to treat them every 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes I missed it and it took like 5 weeks, but have been an average monthly application. I started with higher rates and now dropped to 2.5% because I started to see some phytotoxicity. I'll show you guys later. But so far, out of the 94 palms, we found 17 palms with CRB damage. This was a good location because it was in Waimanalo, which is a somewhat recent infestation in Hawaii, in Oahu. So basil was the only treatment that didn't have any CRB like damage so far. The controls had about like 16-20%. Some oils were not effective. So kind of betting and hoping that basil will stick as an effective control. Things to look for, like Josh mentioned, the borehole. Sometimes the hole is very easy to see. Sometimes it's not as easy because it's hidden by the oldest front. So you have to put your finger there, see if it's actually a hole, and then hope there is not a centipede there. But it's the challenges of doing CRB research. We cannot control where the beetle is. Nobody wants to place beetles in their palms to see if they will eat the palm or not, if there is insecticide there. So we're pretty kind of like hoping that they will choose palms at an even preference. And then we're finding things out as we go. This is the phytotoxicity issues I had. Here was me being a little bit naive, like we start to kill CRBs with oil, so I start to spray palms with like 25% solution oil, not thinking like, oh, that's actually a herbicide now. And these palms all recovered, but that's why I went back to 2.5%. I wouldn't go over 5%. I'm going now with 2.5 to be like, because it's somebody else's palm as well. So I want to be very careful with that. But yeah, and there is a product in the market that came up, palm tree weevil killer from Nanotech. There was a lot of people asking us and expecting extension from like providing information if it's effective or not. So we set up a trial together with the CRB response team at the Department of Urban Forestry Nursery. We treated 4 palms with imidacloprid injection, via injection, 4 palms with 1 guard as a canopy drench. 1 guard is only labeled for lawn and turf use, not for ornamentals use. We only pick this product because it has a multi-use mode of action. So we wanted something strong to compare with. And then the soil drench of the palm tree weevil killer. There's a wasp here in my office. So we evaluated the palms 90 days after treatment. We evaluated the 2 youngest leaves of each palm. And after 90 days, using the 95% confidence level, there was no statistical difference between all the treatments. When we reduce the confidence to 90%, so that means like we have 90% confidence that there was a difference or not between treatments. There was a significant difference between imidacloprid spray and the control. So that means like it was statistically better to do imidacloprid injection or insecticide contact spray compared to control. We already kind of knew that. And the palm tree weevil killer was grouped very closely with the control. So that's not like statistical difference, but helps like give guidance on how to use these different products. I've been trying different trapping methods. So this on the left top was at a nursery. So we did the netting, as Josh mentioned, and placed the pheromone lures inside these food containers with holes in it. And all the beetles that got caught, they were always adjacent to the lure. And with a homeowner here in Oahu, we set up these 25-gallon traps in different places to see like if we could catch and kind of reduce the population. This is like the homeowner's data of how many beetles has caught so far. So with 10 traps this is in a 2-acre property with 90 palms, has been catching around between 9 to 20 beetles a week. I want to note that he put a camera at night and saw cats and mongoose eating the beetles. So maybe the counts were bigger than that. But it was just like, when we're at a situation where there's nothing really we can do to like protect every single palm, like whatever we can do, like let's do it. But the same trap system that was very effective at this catching a lot of beetles at this property in Mokuleia with 90 palms in the property was not catching much at very like couple miles away properties, probably because these properties didn't have as many palms close by. So kind of like we're learning on the process. And yeah, that's kind of what we have been doing so far. And next step, if anybody on the audience is familiar with essential oils, we need to learn like how to make essential oils last longer so they don't volatilize so fast. So you can have that longer interval between applications, because I understand that bi-weekly to even monthly application can become like not very cost effective, difficult. In India, there are a lot of like scientific papers mentioning botanical cakes. These are like pastes that they make with neem oil, essential oils, and they shovel in between the fronds. So it's like a physical barrier and repellent in the palms. And now we're gonna try planting basil as a ground cover in this area, and because they need a ground cover anyways, like so. We try everything we can, because so we can harvest coconuts as well. There is the ornamental side of it, which is the imidacloprid application, maybe drone application. And then when it comes to the edible, like cultural side of it, how can we still use the plant as a resource? We need different tool set for it that we are developing. Yeah. Thank you. Any questions or discussions? Whenever it's time, we can do it. So back to you, Russell.
Great. Thank you, Alberto and Josh. That was a great presentation. That's my first time seeing it, so that was really useful information. Let me, there, you stop your share. Now we're going to have Jade. Jade, if you're available, we'll have Jade from Big Island Invasive Species Committee come talk to us about currently where BISC is at and updates on Big Island CRB. So
Hey, thank you, Russell. So real quick, I am Jade Miyashiro. I am the invasive arthropod technician for the Big Island Invasive Species Committee. The update's pretty quick, but I'll get right into it. So here's kind of what happened on the Big Island. Back in October 2023, there was a resident in Waikoloa that found grubs in the decaying coconut stump on their property. It was confirmed to be CRB. We brought in a detector dog to check to make sure we got it all. Got more panel traps for the neighborhood and other areas. And after that, quiet for a while. And then in April of this year, 4 more adults were found in Waikoloa, kind of the same area, like in the village. 2 of them were actually at the Waikoloa dry forest. Going out there to look at it, most likely didn't get there because it wanted to. There was no really habitable things for it. It was all lava rock and like dry forest trees, which they didn't seem to care about. They probably got caught in the wind. They were in the village, got caught up in the wind, and then ended up in the trap down there. One of them was at another resident near the golf course. And the last one was found at the green waste facility nearby. Kind of a note on that, we don't think it was breeding in the green waste. It was, our best guess is it was somebody dropped off green waste and the adult was hitchhiking on with the green waste. More traps were put out at the facility and it didn't catch any more after that. And it is a green waste run by the county, so it has to reach those temperatures anyway, and they agreed to they've been really on it. They've been turning it more, and they're aware that they don't want to be spreading CRB if it was a breeding site. But so far they haven't seen anything, and it seems to be somebody was hitchhiking over there. After those 4 adults were found, CRB response team and HDOA came down and treated some of the trees in the village, and we haven't seen any since then. So what can pretty much the public do about it? Because we're not at that stage like Oahu is, where we need to be treating our coconuts and stuff like that. We're still at the kind of early detection stage where we're still trying to find them and see where they're at, because they can always pop up on a different part of the island, not just Waikoloa, and it could be totally unrelated like incidents. So we want you guys to be on the lookout for tree damage and more grubs. Keep in mind, like so far we haven't even seen tree damage in Waikoloa, probably because the population was really small still, or hasn't been damaged enough yet. So just keep an eye on mulch piles. If you have stumps, like you cut down the tree and there's just the stump still in the yard. Potted plants, bag mulch and soil, all things that have already been talked about. And then erosion socks. I've been told that they've been found on Oahu because you figure those things are just shoved with plant matter, so they could use that too. So just pretty much keep an eye on all the organic matter and stuff. So you guys, this is the same one that was used earlier, and thank you CRB team, because this is great and we use it all the time. I just wanted to show it again, just to be like, there is a lookalike on the Big Island, the Oriental flower beetle. It is super, super common. People see it all the time and mistake it for CRB, especially the grubs. So here's a little video of the Oriental flower beetle crawling upside down, which is really strange and pretty iconic. Like these other grubs, CRB doesn't do that. It's kind of fat and clunky and stays on its side. So if you feel like it, pick up the grub, hold in your hand, throw it on the table, whatever, and see how it crawls around. And that's one way to tell. Like, oh, if it's upside down with its legs in the air, it's an Oriental flower beetle and not a coconut rhinoceros beetle. So, but here's another example. Here's a grub, looks kind of the same as the other ones. It's not crawling upside down and it's not crawling on its side. It's like, so then, like, what is it? It's actually something else. It doesn't have a common name. But it was another type of scarab beetle. So just keep in mind, we can't rely on the size, right? Because CRBs start tiny and get really big. And scarab beetle is a big family, and they all have grubs that are relatively similar looking at it. Pale white, brown head, kind of gross. They all look like that. So just because you find a grub, don't panic. So what we want you guys to do is like take a picture of it from different angles, see if you can get the raster line, get a video of how it's moving if you see the thing with the legs in the air, and then especially save it. We've gotten a lot of reports like, oh, I found the CRB grub and the picture is blurry, or the body is turned in such a way that we can't tell what it is for sure. And we asked for another picture or to bring it in, and they said they squished it or fed it to their chicken or whatever. So hold on to the grubs. They do, once they die, they do kind of turn to mush really, really quickly. So just throw it in like a plastic container, a jar, or whatever, and keep it in the freezer until we give you the all clear that it's something else, you can throw it away. If it is questionable, we'll probably tell you to bring it in, or we'll pick it up, and then we'll get a DNA tested if it gets to that point. Something else you guys can do is you can take home a panel trap. So these are just, I want to say these are just for monitoring. These are not a control method. This is pretty much what the adults were caught in. People had traps set up in certain areas. They looked in the trap and there was beetles at the bottom of the bucket. So we have some to give away if you want one. We do ask that, like, once we give it to you, it is your responsibility. The lure lasts for about 3 months, so you can contact us again if you need another lure. And just once a month, kind of check in with us to say there was nothing in the bucket, or if there was something, then yes, let us know right away. If you guys are on the Kona side, we're working with the Waikoloa Dry Forest. Rob is holding a bunch for us. You can contact him directly and just say, hey, I want a CRB trap, and he can get it to you. And if you have friends and family on the Hilo side, you can contact us. And same thing, just say, I want a CRB trap, and we can schedule a pickup for you. So that's pretty much all that's going on the Big Island. There's more things in the works, probably more detector dog stuff, but it's still things we have to set up and work on, and probably post it on our social media and things like that when we're ready to go. But right now it's mostly just we're working on IND grubs and other bugs and stuff like that, and getting more panel traps out there. So this is all of our contact info, whatever you prefer, email or social media. Just send us pictures or questions.
Great. Thanks for the update, Jade. That was a really useful update to see what's going on here on Big Island in terms of where we're at, the status of CRB. We'll also have Rissa join us from the CRB response team. So you can go ahead and load up there, Rissa. You're already ahead of me. And just everybody will save question and answer until after Arissa is done, and we can hop on into Q&A for everybody, all the panelists. Take it away, Arissa. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to you for coordinating this, and then Josh and Alberto covered a lot of really great information, and then also Jade, a lot of the same information I'm going to cover here. But today I'm just going to go over mostly what we are our response team is doing in Big Island. So as was mentioned earlier, CRB was first detected in Hawaii on Oahu in 2013, and then for about 10 years it was only on Oahu until October of last year when the first detection was found on Big Island. And so this is just going over those finds again, mostly concentrated in the Waikoloa area. So just a little update on some of what our team has done. I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Bisque because our team isn't currently on the ground out there. So our program is based on Oahu. And so a lot of the work that's being done is a collaboration between different agencies. So Bisque is doing a lot of work, and then also some work being done by H2A and USDA out there. So we've had one visit so far out to Big Island in May, where we were able to do some surveys, treatments, and outreach. All our programs visits have so far been focused in the Waikoloa area, since that's where we've been finding CRB. But in that visit, we did some palm treatments near where the beetles were found. So by the Hawaii Sanitary Landfill, and then also on trees bordering like the Waikoloa Village. And then in addition to that, we also did some outreach when we went out there. So we did outreach to the Waikoloa Village Association. We held a few meetings during the day, and then also a community session in the evening at one of the schools. And then we were also able to get some trainings with landscape and maintenance staff at the hotels and resorts. One thing that we've noticed here on Oahu is that landscape staff and people working every day with the trees and being up in the trees is a very, very important aspect of detecting CRB early. So if you're seeing anything suspicious, definitely report it. For future plans, we do have a trip planned out to, again, Waikoloa area later this month. Since no breeding sites have been found after that first breeding site, a lot of our focus right now are going to be on tree treatments. And then we will be moving on to damage surveys in those treatment areas, and then extending out to survey surrounding areas if we have enough time. And then one update for outreach is that mailers were actually just sent out last week. Again, alerting the public of CRB in their area and encouraging reporting. So reporting, as we see here, that was the way that we found that CRB was in Big Island. So it's very, very important. In areas where we found CRB, we're trying to get the public to actually report even breeding material that they have on site. So, of course, reporting any specimens and tree damage is very important, but also in those areas where our surveying of trees are not seeing any damage, we're not really able to find any breeding sites so far. Now we're calling to the community to help us to identify where those breeding sites might be. So this is very similar to Jade's call to action. Yeah, if you see anything, take some photos of it, some videos, and report it as soon as possible. And you can report it to BISC, you can report it to 643 Pest, you can report it to us. We're all in communication with each other, so we'll make sure that gets to the right person and help with confirmation and next steps. Okay, and then here's some contact info for us as well. And then that's all I have for today. So I guess we'll move on to questions now. Thank you.
Thanks, Arissa. That was great. It was good to see a detail of the treatments that were done in Waikoloa. And it's also great that we've got both BISC and CRB response team working on this because, you know, as you know, sometimes we cannot have enough hands on a project. So it's great that everybody's working on it. So now we've got time, about 20 minutes or so for question and answer. So you can type your question into the chat, type it to everybody so that I can see it and ask, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question directly and we can have a conversation here. Yeah. So while we're waiting for any questions, I also wanted to thank Ty McDonald, who helped organize this webinar. Many of you will know him as ornamentals and landscaping extension agent in Kona. So thanks a lot, Ty, for helping organize and for being here. So we've got, can anybody further explain how you know that spreading mulch in a thin layer is effective at deterring CRB? Is it merely dryness? And where is the line between compost, mulch, potting soil as a potential breeding area versus bare soil? What's the safe zone? So maybe a little bit more of a conversation about that. And that might be possibly an Alberto or a Josh question, unless you want to punt it off to somebody else.
Give it a try, and Josh can add it in if needed, but I think it's the dryness. So close the door. There's a very, I think we say like 2 inches, but 2 inches of fine mulch can hold moisture. And if you have consistent 2 inches of fine mulch, the humic acids will migrate down and your soil will become a very, very rich in organic material, like content. So CRB will breed there even is less than 2 inches. I've heard of CRB breeding in sod farms that have like 1 inch of substrate over plastic film, but because it's always wet and is 100% organic material, is like prime CRB breeding material. So I think the key, like the person almost like answer already in the question, is like you want it to stay dry because it's the organic material with moisture that will attract CRB to lay the eggs. because the larvae will feed on moist, decomposing organic material. And then that's when Josh or Arisa or somebody else can add if needed.
No, I agree with everything you said. So even like all the things about the dryness, the moisture, and then the other part was like all those compost mulch potting soil versus bare soil. So that one, primarily if it's like organic rich, it could be an issue. So I think like in some parts of like southeast of Big Island, like there are just soils that are naturally like organic rich, and that could be a potential where you don't even have to have mulch on top of it, but they could go in there, I suspect. So yeah, just the key is that organic rich material and moisture. So not sure if other speakers have other things.
That's great. I also just wanted to add with the spreading it thin, another thing that we've seen is like Josh was mentioning earlier, sometimes CRB chickens or pigs or different animals will kind of pick at them. And so with spreading it thin, it just kind of makes, if there are predators around, it makes them a little bit more susceptible to being eaten and found.
Yes, the spreading thing is also a recommendation for people that have mulch piles to, even if they will pile it again. I mean, not saying that you should keep mulch because it's almost like you should, it's wrong to say that now, like to keep mulch. But people that use mulch in their farms, like periodically spread it out so you can look for CRB, like the predators can eat it. And then maybe after you dry it out, if you need, you can pile it again. But we don't want to like piles that stay piled and moist for longer periods so that CRB can complete its cycle.
Great, thanks. So probably I'll try to go down the line here. What do you recommend for responsibly transporting cut palm fronds from maintained landscapes to a hot composting facility? What's the best way to transport possible material that's infested?
Arisa, do you wanna spoon?
Yeah, I can take this one. So I think one thing is going to be inspection is going to be very important. So inspecting the material before you move it. Another thing is if you're on a job where there's a chipper, chipping material will kill CRB if it's present. And then hot composting, once it gets to the hot compost facility, once it reaches those temperatures, again, if there are any eggs or anything that you missed, then it'll kill them off.
Great.
Can I just, sorry, this is Marianne. I asked that last question. I just wanted to ask one follow-up. So fresh, it hadn't dawned on me, we have no infestation. We're in South Kona and we're just trying to implement best practices and model future behaviors, God forbid. But so freshly chipped and maybe net covered or whatever, then that could be taken responsibly. I know we're just trying not to move stuff around or appear that we're moving stuff around at this point on Hawaii Island. So thanks for that suggestion. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
Well, so sorry, very quick. Related to that, there is a movement now, like almost like a community organization now, on the east side of Oahu, trying to promote that like locally use of mulch material. So whatever is trimmed, like stay within the block pretty much. And the way to reduce the movement material, because if you're not moving material, then you are like reducing a lot the risk of moving CRB around. So it takes a lot of community like organization and collaboration and responsibility to, because if like CRB response is saying what to do, the Hawaii Department of Agriculture is trying to enforce things, but if the people that handle the material are still moving things around, like we don't have cops in every corner stopping trucks to check for CRB or mulch material. So it takes a lot of community and like regional responsibility and collaboration to limit as much as possible the movement of material, and especially if there is a risk, even if it's as low as possible, of contaminate material with eggs or CRB.
Great, thanks, Alberto. Is there any literature or research on using Safari, the systemic insecticide, as a basal bark application for potential control methods? And do you know the application rate that was used for the ArborJet imidacloprid applications?
I don't know of the Safari, and I know that at the CRB response website, I believe there are directions on how to use imajet. So I would refer to the CRB response resources on when it comes to the imajet.
Great, thanks, Alberto. And this one I don't have an answer for, and maybe somebody does. Has inter-island movement of mulch been shut down yet? Bag of soil with dozens of larvae on Oahu is terrifying. There was a news story with a soil bag with lots of larvae this week. Hopefully it's not being moved in between the islands, this individual says. So have they banned the import of vector material?
I can touch on this. So HGOA did implement an interim rule that restricts any movement of host material from Oahu to neighboring islands. So any material that could potentially host CRB has to be treated before it leaves Oahu. I think in regards to the soil bags, that if they're being staged on Oahu, they're not moving, that any soil bags going to neighboring islands are either just docking here, staying stored in a CRB proof container, and then moving out to neighbor islands, or aren't even spending the night here, essentially. Yeah. But yeah, any potential host material and palms are supposed to be treated before they're moved.
If you want to be on the safe side too, like if say you're buying a bag of soil from someplace local on the Big Island, don't get the discounted bag with the plenty pukas in it, because that's just increasing the chance that maybe there is something inside of it, even if it's heavily discounted. Buy the nicer looking bags, because it's very obvious when something's ripped a hole in it and went and laid eggs in it. But you can find your nice bag, take that home, and you can open it and just dump it all out into a container or something, like sift through it, make sure there's nothing in it, and then keep it in a sealed container. Is probably the best thing that we can do on the Big Island.
Thanks. That's good information. I also skipped a question here because I had answered it partially. Somebody asked, I import a lot of mulch from Kona to Ocean View, and now the county is bringing mulch to the transfer station in Nalehu. Is it being tested? We did have an individual here that was going to attend from the Hawaii County Department of Environmental Management. I believe they already left. If you haven't left, you can also speak up, Alex. So I did contact them after I learned about the potential, and they informed me that they do not currently have CRB in their mulch, and they are heating it, and they are checking for CRB. But if you want any updates, or if you want to know about solid waste movement, I would recommend contacting them directly, or contact myself, and I am willing to contact them. I put that website with their contact information up in the chat, and I'll put it in the chat again here. So I don't know specifically about the movement of solid waste to the Nalehu facility. I'm not sure if Jade has any information about
I
that.
think we're about the same, that they were checking it very thoroughly and they were turning it like more often than they normally would, just to make sure there's nothing in there. But yeah, I think you got it all.
Yeah, and there was also some information that they're not allowing green waste to be dumped at the facility, but that's because they have too much mulch already. People aren't getting enough mulch from the facility, so it's not because of CRB being in the mulch itself. It's that they simply have too much mulch for Hawaii Department of Health regulations. Ooh, that was a great question and answer. Do we have any more questions? Comments? Oh yeah, sorry, Cassie. I missed the CRB for Maui. So this was specifically for Big Island, so I'm not sure if we'll be prepared to comment on Maui, but maybe Arissa would have some quick comments on updates on CRB for Maui.
Yeah, so I can do maybe some brief updates. So we actually haven't found anything since the first detection. So nothing's been found yet. There's a big push for trapping now. So there's a lot of traps going up. So a lot of different surveys happening. If you want, we have updated like maps and stuff on our website, so you can kind of see status as it changes every month.
Yeah, it's Marianne again. I had one comment. Is my understanding is that the regulations are quite strict about establishing a green waste or hot composting facility, because the county considers it a no different than a transfer station. So I was really pleased to hear that it's a great strategy to try and keep compost and green waste in the neighborhood, but there are some significant barriers. So that might be an interesting conversation to have with the county about how to reduce CRB risk. I won't speak for Chantel, but this is something that my friend Chantel Chung, who's got the Mauna Community Gardens in South Kona, had experienced, had proposed this very thing, and was, encountered some difficulties in getting permission to do that.
Great, thanks for that, Marianne. Okay, we've got one more question, and then we'll wrap it up here. Would leaving fronds to dry out in the sun help? For example, is it safe to assume that dry coconut leaves are not a risk? If leaves dry out completely within a couple of months, then we can assume that instars wouldn't make it to adulthood. Question. Just trying to think about best management practices. Does it make sense to dry coconut leaves off before movement?
Yeah, so actually, so if you're trimming off live fronds, usually that's not where CRB is going to be. So usually they're going to be down in like the heart of the palm or breeding in decaying plant matter. So if you're trimming live palms, it's going to be pretty low risk to trim those and move them right away. Probably lower risk than letting them sit and decay. So if you have live palms, it's probably best to just do a real good inspection, make sure there's no damage on the tree that would increase the risk, but then also just moving them immediately after inspecting for CRB.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Arissa. It's been really great having you here, Jade, Alberto, and Josh. And thanks everybody for attending. I think, making sure that we're all in this together, and we are all checking and reporting on CRB is the most important way that you can interact and make sure that we're not having CRB spread faster or at all, hopefully, on Big Island. If you want to come to the webinar again, we're holding this same webinar tomorrow, more focus on the nursery industry and for Hilo, but you can still join us if you come up with another question. If you have any additional questions after the webinar, please email me, rgalanti@hawaii.edu. I'll type that into the chat and I can forward the email to the right resource. Again, if you are applying for ISA credits, make sure that you put your name and your certification number into the chat. If you're applying for HDOA credits, mention that you're doing that and put your name into the chat. If you did not register using the Google form, put your email as well so that I can email you the quiz, which you'll have to take to prove that you are familiar with the information and your certification information. That's going to take a little while before I send that out, and it's also going to take a little while before I submit it to HDOA, but you can always follow up with me. That being said, I hope everybody has a great dinner tonight and a good evening. Aloha.
Right. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.